Hello, welcome to Betfair's AFL Trade Talk. I'm Tom Haylock, joined by Darren, Parkin. How are you, great man?
Going along well. Another ripper weekend of footy. We had the Blues take the big scalp, Sydney and Collingwood putting their hand up as the teams to beat. And if someone had said at the start of the year that North Melbourne, Essendon and St Kilda would be 6-0 between them, I reckon we'd be a little bit surprised.
It's a bizarre top eight at the moment. Big weekend last weekend. Lights out, the Gabba again. That's in the lay bin. They got to sort their lights out, the Gabba. What a weekend it was. What do you make of it all, mate?
Yeah, there was some talk that Peter V'landys might have been behind that, given the Broncos played the new Dolphins team in the NRL on the same night.
Have they got a name for that clash?
Well,
the Dolphins versus
they probably
Broncos?
can't call it a Q clash because they've got that in the AFL. But I don't know, Battle of Brisbane or...
They need something, man.
Yeah, they certainly need something, but it was a big ticket for them. I think Brisbane were, that was a really good response. I spoke last week about how hard their draw was and how ordinary they were against Port Adelaide. That was terrific. And Port Adelaide, by extension, had a challenge against one of the best teams in the comp in Collingwood, and Collingwood rose above that. And as we'll discuss later on, that's changed the premiership market once again.
Yeah, it has. Some turnarounds of form. Geelong continue to go at half pace at the moment, looking a bit lacklustre. Carlton proved that they're a good, genuine chance again this year. They should make it, as they probably just faltered late last season, but they look a live chance to make the top eight this season. Geelong only just going at the moment. Brisbane, as you said, defeated Melbourne. Great response from them. Melbourne were pretty plain. Port Adelaide were very plain. Collingwood, I think Collingwood are better than last year. That's probably my main takeaway from the round of football, round two. Number one rated kicking team in the AFL, Collingwood. Number one for ball movement. Number two for ball use. Number three for contest and clearance. Clearances, they were 17th in the comp last year. Now they're second, which is an amazing turnaround.
And I reckon their spread of goal kickers too, that they're probably averaging double figures most weeks in terms of players hitting the scoreboard. They don't have a Tom Lynch or a Jeremy Cameron that could kick 7 or 8 for them every week. They've got Myercheck and Elliott and De Goey and these sorts of players that are all popping up. Will Hoskin, Elliott, McStay, Dacos that are kicking 2s and 3s and really getting that spread of load. They run so hard on transition. Their midfield is obviously elite with the Dacos boys, Pendlebury still going, side bottom, Crisp, Adams.
Depth.
They're probably the best team in it at the moment.
It's amazing. Yeah, as I said, contested possessions as well. They were 17th in 2022. Now they're first. So they've turned. That was what they lacked last year. They were winning close games and they were doing a good job with their ball movement and kicking. But that contested possession and clearances has really taken them to the next level, and that's why they're favourites.
What would be your nearest to pin for Friday night's crowd between Collingwood and Richmond at the MCG? Would have a 9 in front of it?
84.
Yeah, it'll certainly be, I think, mid to high 80s at the very least. That's going to be a doozy. And St Kilda Essendon will be a big crowd as well. Both those sides unbeaten. I think St Kilda's biggest home and away crowd at the MCG is 67,000, and their biggest home and away crowd, full stop, is 71. There'd be a chance of nudging both of those for their 150 celebration.
Yes, that's very true. We'll touch on that in a minute. What was your major takeaway?
Major takeaway was probably the response of Brisbane to show that they were still in contention. And then probably North Melbourne's win over Fremantle. I know, that the expectations on the Kangaroos are still going to be tempered a little bit, but they are humming along quite nicely with Luke Davies-Uniacke taking a real step. Sheasel had 30 the week after getting 34. And it just goes to show what can happen with a bit of an injection of enthusiasm and structure and system.
Good point. Mine is Luke Beveridge, under more pressure than my shirt buttons at the moment, Luke Beveridge. The Dogs are struggling. They've got a hard draw as well coming up. There's tough times for Luke Beveridge. Re-signed him till 2025 too.
It's interesting. I saw that they do that thing in the AFL website, the if segment, the if this, then this. And
Damien Barrett.
And they mentioned, if the Bulldogs are fair income, St Kilda will be a soft kill. And I know a lot of St Kilda supporters have got their back up thinking, that's a bit disrespectful. But I saw it the other way. I actually reckon that was poking the Bulldogs a little bit, thinking, geez, you better win this, otherwise you're in trouble. And it turned out to be true. So they need a response, and it starts with Brisbane, who are back in form at Marvel this week. Yeah,
interesting game that. Let's get to Market Watch. Now, we've had some big firmers, big thrifters. It's only very early in the season. Don't get too carried away here, Darren, because what is there, 21, 22 games to go, or rounds to go. It's a lot can change. But Will Ashcroft had a great game against the D's and he's firmed.
Yeah, he did. He had upwards of 30 possessions. He had, I think, 16 contested, 10 clearances, kicked another goal, having done that the week before, and that's against a super Melbourne midfield with Oliver and Petrarca and Brayshaw and those sorts of players through the middle. So it looks like a two-horse race in the Rising Star. Sheasel, 34 and 30, so he didn't do anything less the second week, but 222 for Ashcroft, 350 for Sheasel. Then you go down to Finn Callahan, Aaron Cadman, Mateus Filippo, those sorts of players that are around about the mid-teens, early 20s in that market. Cam Mackenzie at 21 probably still offers a bit of value.
Can anyone else win it outside of those two?
Well, it depends. Yeah, I mean,
it's only early though.
We saw Matt Real a couple of years ago start well, then do a shoulder. So, injuries that'd be the only thing that would stop it being one of those two, I would think. And if one gets injured, the other one will probably win. So, I think maybe Mateus Filippo or Cam Mackenzie would be a slight danger.
Potentially back both of them at the moment. If one gets injured, you get good value. Pie's the big firmer for the flag. They were $7.80 prior to round 2 into $5.80 now after round 2. So they've been the big firmers. They've been matched at a high of $12 as well, Darren. So are they your favourite? Have you got them the team to beat?
It's interesting. I had Melbourne clear favourite the week before. They've gone from $5.80 out to $7. Still second favourite. Yeah. And Geelong, who opened at about $5.40, are now $7.60. I think it comes from those three, but not discounting Sydney either. Look, I had Melbourne last week, and I know they lost to Brisbane, and I know Gawn got injured, but not enough to jump off them at this stage. So, sticking with Melbourne, I think there needs to be more evidence to suggest they won't win it than last week.
Good news, bad news, but good news for Gawn. Wasn't as bad as we thought with that injury. Dockers and Dogs, 0-2, both of those two. They've drifted in top 8 markets. Fremantle matched as low as $1.61 to make the top 8. They're out to $2.84 at the moment, and the Bulldogs as well, $1.75 matched, and they've drifted all the way out to $3.40, I think. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Now $3.50, so they've moved a little bit again in the last 24 hours or so. And the other two, so St Kilda and Essendon, were about $4, $4.50 to make the 8. Essendon have only moved a little bit into $3.90, but St Kilda are pretty much halved into about $2.38 with that. And Port Adelaide, when I checked it last night, they were $1.76. They're now into $1.60. So some punters have gone on and liked the $1.76 and have wound them in a little bit closer, even though they lost last week.
It's the beauty of the exchange. I love the market flux. Let's have a look at this week. Bulldogs Brisbane. Bulldogs $2.90 versus Brisbane Thursday night. Bulldogs there to respond. A bit of a watch game for me.
Yeah, it's a hard game, a hard round overall. So you would expect at some point the Bulldogs will respond. They're not a basket case in the sense that they played finals last year and made a grand final the year before. And Brisbane have played one shocker and one great game. So exactly where are they at? But I think the market's about right.
Collingwood, Richmond, blockbuster Friday night, MCG. Collingwood, $1.56. Richmond were okay against the Crows. They obviously started well, but Crows were witches' hats in the second quarter and bounced back and got their game back. It was a bit of a weird match, that one. Collingwood team to beat there?
Yeah, and I think Hopper under an injury cloud, Dustin Martin under an injury cloud, and
it
looks like Short is out as well. So I think the Tigers, just a couple of soldiers down, might swing it more Collingwood's way.
Hawthorn, North Melbourne, not a great match there. North Melbourne, $1.57. Did you ever think they'd be $1.57?
Yeah. It's a danger game in the sense that Hawthorn are hard to beat in Launceston. As much as Hawthorn are struggling a little bit, or struggling quite a bit, North still a young side, so you think they're going to be prone to inconsistency. They deserve to be favourites, but it's a dangerous game.
GWS Carlton, I think Carlton should win that. Not a bad price.
Finding money on the street, I think.
Oh, Carlton. Really?
Yeah.
Jeez. St Kilda Essendon, as you said, both teams 2-0. St Kilda conceded 52 points and 41 points. Up against Essendon, who scored 124 and 108. It's going to be a fascinating match.
And St Kilda have had 3 goalless quarters against them. St Kilda have historically had problems with Essendon. It's been a bogey side for as long as I've been alive, really. But conversely, it's St Kilda's 150th anniversary, so you think they'd be up for it. Jack Steele goes out injured for a month. Probably a genuine 50-50 based on all of those factors.
Showdown and the Derby on. Showdown Saturday night, the Derby Sunday night. And then you've got Gold Coast versus Geelong, which is a bit of a danger game for Geelong as well. They're, as I said, they're only just going at the moment. And Gold Coast can be hard to beat up at Metricon as well. And then you've got Melbourne Sydney, which is a blockbuster.
It is. And Sydney underdogs in that game. Obviously, Sydney beat Melbourne in the qualifying final at the MCG last year. And Sydney have started the season travelling beautifully. Melbourne, reasons why it happened to them last week, but they would have been disappointed in it. 50-50 game, and if it's a 50-50 game and one side's a reasonable underdog, that's a bit of value.
Take Sydney at $2.18. Might even be a good back to lay, set up a couple of lays in the play before the match and just keep in play and watch hopefully Sydney kick the first couple of goals and trade out. Make some money that way. What are you most looking forward to in round 3?
Yeah, there's a lot to like. Obviously, Collingwood-Richmond is a blockbuster. You've got Josh Dunkley playing against the Bulldogs. You've got Alistair Clarkson coaching against Hawthorn. You've got St Kilda and Essendon both undefeated. You've got a showdown and a derby, and you've got Melbourne and Sydney. So, look, Melbourne, Sydney, Collingwood-Richmond are probably the two that are match of the round. But putting my St Kilda hat on, the 150th celebrations in front of 70,000 at the G, that's going to be a pretty good night, I think.
That's big.
Provided they win.
That's big. Showdown for me. That is, people outside of Adelaide don't appreciate how much these teams hate each other. What it means is the talk of the town the whole week. You go to Adelaide, you go to these showdowns, it's on.
And and from a betting point of view, it's a danger game for Port. Like, those games really do level out. It doesn't matter where they're at. You'd think it just brings it right back to parity, these blockbuster rivalry matches.
Port Adelaide are being put under the gun or the spotlight this week as well, which they need to respond after a lacklustre effort last week. Also, I'm really keen Thursday night to see how the Bulldogs respond. Pressure's, as I said, Luke Beveridge is under a lot of pressure. Dogs have got to turn up here, otherwise the pressure just mounts for the rest of the season. Let's get to buy, hold and sell. Darren, you can start with your buy.
Buying Geelong, just looking at their fixture, I think there's still a lot of trust in them. They lost to Collingwood, who are going as well as anyone, and they lost to Carlton narrowly, and the Blues look definitely a finals team. So they're not going brilliantly, but they're also not falling off a cliff. They play the Gold Coast, then Hawthorn, then West Coast in the next 3 weeks. I think they'll probably, as much as this is a danger game, I think they'll clean those 3 up, and then they'll be back on track, and the market will reflect that. So get them now rather than waiting for them to belt 3 sides.
So maybe back them now in the premiership market or the top 4 market. And they might be 3 and 2 and right back on track there. Carlton top 8, I think they're almost a lock now.
The next few weeks is good.
Yeah, so I think they're going to be very hard to beat. They're a buy for me for the top 8. Jeremy Cameron and Davies-Uniacke, as you said, they're absolutely airborne. I've taken 110s Betfair about Cameron for the Brownlow, and we'll talk about that a bit later as well. But last week, 9 coaches' votes, 22 kicks, 3 handballs, 6 goals won.
Yeah.
It's some match. He was outstanding. It was Geelong versus Carlton.
And he looked injured for most of the second half, and we're still cleaning it up. And
fair game, injured.
I've hardly seen a player that can, those snaps he kicks from 45, 50 metres out to get that much distance and bend on kicks at that distance. Yeah, he's an absolute superstar. And
Davies-Uniacke's firmed considerably in the Brownlow as well. Perfect 20 coaches' votes in 2 rounds.
Definitely a chance. I just
probably don't win enough.
Yeah, if they win an 8-game season, maybe there'd be a chance. Yeah.
Hold.
I'm going to hold Port Adelaide in the sense that hard to get a read on them, which I mentioned at the start of the year anyway. So great against Brisbane, then didn't pass the test against a good Collingwood team. So still don't know where they're at. And they play Adelaide this week, which is a danger game. And if they win, it's not going to do much to their market, I don't think, because they're expected to win. And if they lose, then it would probably put a few alarm bells up. So it's one of those games for Port where you learn very little if they win, and it hurts a lot if they lose. So,
who's under more pressure? Beveridge if they lose, or Ken Hinkley if Port lose?
Probably Hinkley because of the blowtorch in a 2-team town, I think.
That's a good answer. Yeah. My hold's Richmond. Obviously, 1-1, drawn 1. Play Collingwood, Dogs, Sydney. Tough round, especially if they're not fully fit with a couple of injuries. So you'd expect them to go down this weekend to Collingwood and then Sydney in a couple of weeks after that. I'm just holding on them. I'm not sure where they're at. It was a bit of a tough game Adelaide last week were coming off that 37-degree match and were entitled to get tired. So they could have easily won that, Adelaide, if they kick straight as well. So I'm just not sure where Richmond's fully at the moment. Your sell, mate?
Selling the Bulldogs. I mentioned Brisbane last week with their tough draw, and they came out immediately and made a liar of that and appear to be back on track. But the Bulldogs, 0-2, poor percentage. They've lost both games by more than 50 points. They play Brisbane, then Richmond, then Port Adelaide in Adelaide, then Fremantle in Perth. Now, I know Fremantle aren't going that well, but that's not an easy game. Port away is tough. They're probably underdogs in all 4 of those matches. So 0-2 with a tough month, that's problems, I think.
I'm selling Gold Coast and Fremantle for that matter. Gold Coast just don't look like they're ready to step up. Speaking of coaches under pressure, Stewie Dew will be under a bit of pressure if they don't start performing very soon. Fremantle just not playing like a top 8 side. I don't think they'll make the top 8. So 2 sells for me, Gold Coast and Fremantle. Let's get to our bets this week, Darren, and you're with the Blues, I think.
Yeah, I like the price. I mean, I know they deserve to be favourites. The Giants will get a couple of players back, and I've liked the spirit in the Giants team. Even with the loss to West Coast, they were pretty undermanned, and they still fought pretty hard. So I think Adam Kingsley's got them pretty committed, but I think the Blues are going to cash in on this next month. I think to get out of the first 2 matches unbeaten, to draw Richmond and beat Geelong, they're in pretty good shape. So I really like the price on them. I think they were $1.55 at one point. They've even come out a bit to about $1.60-ish. So yeah, I like that a lot for me. And probably Geelong top 4, as you mentioned earlier. I think now would be a good time to get on them because they'll be shorter in a month.
I like that. And you are laying something in the Freo West Coast?
Yeah, the overs in that one. So
it'll be low scoring.
Yeah, I think so. I think Fremantle struggling to score at the moment, but also desperately in need of a win. And I think we'll see them, really zoned in on that contest. I think they'll probably beat West Coast, but I think it'll be a bit of a scrap. I just think they need a result, and they'll grind out a result. It might be an 80-60 type game. So I think they'll win, but they won't blow them apart.
I like your thinking there. As I said earlier, I gave this away. Jeremy Cameron, I am backing for the Brownlow at the moment. I've taken 110s. He's in about $60 or $70. You can still take that. Ask for a bit better. 3 votes last time they played the Gold Coast. He's polled 17 Brownlow votes against him in his career. Unbelievable. Have a listen to this, Darren. Last few matches, 3 goals, 3. This is against Gold Coast. 3 goals, 3. 3 goals. 9 goals, 5. 5 goals, 2. 6 goals, 3. 6, 1. 4, 1. 7 goals, 2. 2 goals, 4. And 4 goals, 6.
So he's getting 6, 7, 8 shots at goal against them. And they're struggling.
And he's probably averaging 5 goals a game against them
in
the last 10 games. That's outstanding. And he's polled 17 Brownlow votes. He'll poll.
And he's in unbelievable form.
He's going as well as ever. So I'm backing him, and I'm laying Petrarca in the Brownlow. Never polled a vote against Sydney.
Okay.
Christian Petrarca, which is interesting.
Sydney are noted for squeezing star midfielders.
Yeah, so he's never polled a vote. He was okay in the final when they played. I think he had 24, but wouldn't have polled a vote there. So, that's my back and lay, focusing on the Brownlow this week. It's a very hard game and round head-to-head. This a few tricky. And I'm not sure where teams are at.
And on that, the only other one that interests me is the last team standing market. So there were 5 teams that are 2 and zip: Sydney, Essendon, St Kilda, North Melbourne and Collingwood. So Essendon, St Kilda and Collingwood are joint favourites at $4, North at $4.80, Sydney at $5. Now Sydney and Collingwood are the best of those 5 teams without question. But Collingwood play Richmond and Brisbane at the Gabba in the next 2 weeks. Sydney play Melbourne at the MCG. They've got Geelong and I think Richmond somewhere along the way. Essendon and St Kilda play each other, so one of them will fall out of that market, one of them will stay on, but then Essendon play the Giants the week after and St Kilda play the Gold Coast the week after, so there's a chance that whoever wins the Essendon-St Kilda game goes 4-0, and North, who are one of the rank outsiders at $4.80, play Hawthorn this week, so you'd think they'll probably get to 3-0, so I don't know which way to go on that market, but whoever wins St Kilda Essendon, so maybe back both of them.
Who would have thought that
maybe back both
St Kilda, North Melbourne are in this market? It's unbelievable.
That's a curious one.
Been an absolute pleasure, mates. We've touched on plenty. I can't wait for the round of footy, and hopefully you're not here next week.
It'll be you and Carl, I think, next week.
Carl and I put the red vest on and have a spell, mate. Been a pleasure. Join us next week.
Imagine what you could be buying instead. For free and confidential support, call the number on the screen or visit the website.